How many times have you thought, after being kicked out of a place, "I'll make my own, with blackjack and hookers"? A similar idea crossed the mind of engineer Giorgio Rosa, who, tired of having to comply with Italian laws, decided to found a country of his own. In this video, I'm going to tell you the crazy story of the island of Roses, a micronation that remained independent for some days on a platform in the middle of the sea. Before we start with the story, we need to take a step back and understand one thing. How do you found a nation? Basically, anyone can found a nation. The problem is that a nation has no real power. There are many nations whose representatives claim they belong to an independent and sovereign entity, but other countries don't care. This is the case of the Republic of Molossia or the Principality of Sealand. In the case of Molossia, residents still have to pay taxes to the American government. A nation is in fact different from a state, with the latter being internationally recognized. Liechtenstein and Vatican City are examples of microstates recognized by almost every other country in the world. They can do what they want inside their borders, without external interference. Let's suppose you want to make your own independent state. What would you need? The first thing you need is a territory. Now, most of the land is already occupied by other states, so you have two options. Either you occupy a part of another state's territory, or you build a platform in international waters. After a territory, you need a government. It can be a monarchy, a republic, it doesn't matter. But the government is not enough. You also need a system of laws, a currency, a flag, and then, last but not least, you need inhabitants who allow the state to have a GDP and thus being self-sustaining. Finally, as I already said, the most important thing to be a state and not just a nation is to have international recognition, because it's not enough to say, "I am a state," to be one. So, creating a new state is an apparently impossible challenge, but not for Giorgio Rosa, the protagonist of our story. Italy, the 1960s. Giorgio Rosa was an industrial engineer who, like many people of the time, had a strong ideal of freedom and a lot of money. Italy felt a bit tight for him, with all the laws and bureaucracy that we still know well today. One day he was struck by an idea, to create a personal island on which found his own state, La Repubblica dell'Isola delle Rose, Republic of the Island of Roses in English. This name was chosen because Giorgio's surname means rose in Italian. We don't know his exact plan or hidden reasons, but it is widely believed that he wanted the island to be a lucrative tourist hub with bars, restaurants, hotels, and above all, gambling and other illegal activities. The first step towards this dream is to have a territory, as we have seen. He came up with the idea of building a platform about 11 kilometers and 612 meters from the coast, that is, 500 meters beyond the border of Italian national waters at that time. According to his calculations, this would have allowed him to build in international waters, and thus avoiding problem with Italian law. Rosa would have been the president of the nation, and the government would have been composed of his wife Gabriella and some family friends. As an independent state, it would have had its symbols such as stamps, a flag consisting of red roses on a white and orange background, a currency, the mill, a national anthem, and its language, Esperanto. Esperanto is a language invented at the end of the 19th century and was chosen by Rosa to allow all the people who would have arrived on the island from every corner of Europe to communicate with a common language, despite him not being able to speak it. The official Esperanto name of the country was Respubliko della Insula della Rosoi. In Rosa's mind, everything was ready, but the feat soon proved more difficult than expected. The project began in the 1950s and lasted about 10 years. At the beginning of the 1960s, the first inspections were carried out to understand where to build a platform. Already at that time, however, Rosa was warned by the Coast Guard to drop the idea because that stretch of sea where he wanted to build was controlled by AGIP, the Italian General Petroleum Company, which had a concession for hydrocarbon exploration. However, Rosa was not intimidated and began construction of the island in 1965. The platform's construction was made possible thanks to his company, SPIC, the Experimental Society for Cement Injection. Initially, they built 9 steel piles, filled with concrete and driven 40 meters deep into the seabed. On top of these, 5 floors of 500 square meters each would be built, so they could also open a restaurant, a hotel, and allow others to open shops. You can see what the finished work would have looked like in this advanced computer representation. So, everything was going well, everything was according to plan, if it weren't for a small detail. In 1966, he received an injunction, an order to suspend the work from the Portmaster's office of Rimini. This was the second alarm bell, and this time official. But nothing. This too was ignored, and Rosa continued with his work. Meanwhile, the structure was growing in size. The first floor was built, part of the second, and on August 20, 1967, the Island of Roses opened its door to the public. People then began to frequent the place, which was easily accessible by boat. Tourists and rich playboys began to arrive. A year later, the island declared its independence. On June 25, 1968, a day after the official independence announcement, some Coast Guard patrol boats blocked the island and prevented any other boats from approaching it. In fact, both the Port Authority and all political forces wanted to destroy it. It was even said that the Soviet Union had contacted Rosa to place a small submarine base under the platform. So, from right to left, politicians had their reasons for not wanting that platform in the Adriatic. At this point you might wonder, if Rosa was in international waters, what rights did Italian authorities have? Well, Rosa had made a very well thought out plan, but he had overlooked a small but fundamental detail. There was a zone of another 6 nautical miles beyond the national waters boundary in which the state has the right and duty to safeguard its sovereignty. So, in short, the Italian state had the right to intervene if deemed necessary. Even if this problem had not existed, the founding of the Island of Roses would have encountered other obstacles. In fact, in 1969, the Council of State ruled that the claims of sovereignty, independence, and international rights acquired by the platform's owners were unfounded, as Italian citizens, even outside of Italy, must comply with state laws. The government of the Island of Roses asked for help from anyone, politicians, the UN, newspapers, but nothing to do. On August 7, 1968, the Italian government decided that the Island of Roses had to be dismantled, and the next year it was detonated. And so ends the brief story of this two-story republic. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to know other absurd stories, of course, let me know in the comments.